James Corden, may I have your attention, please? This is the first biography I've read in quite some time now, and I don't tend to read them really because I'm more of a fiction kind of person, but I do also have a real love for comedy, both stand-up and comedy writing, so I thought it was about time I got round to this, as I've had this in my TBR pile for about, since it came out, so what, 2011, 2012, a long time, basically. I was bought this because I had a real obsession with Gavin and Stacey. I say have a real obsession with Gavin and Stacey. I must have watched that programme hundreds and hundreds of times. So it was bought for me as a present, really nicely and kindly, because obviously James Corden writes Gavin and Stacey, or wrote Gavin and Stacey. Now ended. But anyway, besides the point, so I thought I'd finally get around to reading it, especially as he's always somebody I've really admired the work of. I think he's a very, very talented person. So, picked up this book. First of all, I was actually very disappointed. It was nowhere near as funny as I thought it was going to be, especially as James Corden is known for being a comedy writer, more than a stand-up. I was expecting this to be absolutely hilarious. And it wasn't the funniest biography I've ever read. Bearing in mind, I've only ever read 3, so really I don't have a lot to go on, but the other 2 I've read, both Michael McIntyre's and John Richardson's, were a lot funnier. So I'm somewhat disappointed. It also wasn't as emotionally connecting as I first thought it was going to be, or just, I don't know, there was something about it that was slightly disappointing. I did still enjoy it, but I think I was expecting a lot from this book, and so it just did not meet my expectations. Predominantly, the main thing about this book really that stuck with me is how much it changed my opinion of James Corden. Firstly, I admired him so much more because of his drive and determination to do well and succeed in basically becoming famous through acting, writing, comedy. He really, really wanted it. He didn't always try his hardest in some aspects. He admits this himself in the book, so I don't feel bad for saying it, but he had this determination and drive that I don't think anyone can fault, and I really, really admire him for it. Especially a lot of people were saying that he should give up and things like that. So I really enjoyed that about him. He's also done some amazing, amazing things with his life. I keep forgetting that before he was a comedy writer and comedy actor, he actually acted in more serious things. I don't understand why, because The History Boys is one of my favourite films. So I don't know why I never connected that with him properly. Like, I've always known he was in it, but I never connected him as a serious actor. But this obviously shows he did do a lot of acting work in his time as well. So I learnt more about him in that sense, and his professional career I think is fantastic. However, as a person, it feels weird talking about him as a person when I'm reviewing a book, but I kind of feel like with biography you can't really separate the two. So as a person, in certain areas of his life, I personally don't think he was a very nice person. There's a giant sector where he's actually quite horrible. To be fair to him, he is going through a very low point in his life, and he does kind of admit this and explain this. So you kind of come round and really, really appreciate his turnaround and really admire him again for it. And now he seems like a really, really lovely human being. But there are periods in his life where he didn't seem very nice, and that really surprised me. I suppose because I associate him with Smithy so much. I associate him as such a sort of bubbly and lively character, and I began to realise he's actually a separate person, which is probably good as well. But yeah, it kind of, it was unexpected for me, I guess you could say. Secondly, I also really got irritated with him when he was talking about his school years. He never was a horrible person in school, don't get me wrong, he seemed like a nicer boy, but I would have been really irritated with him. He was the kid in the class that didn't try and mucked around and just really sort of aggravated the teacher and made continuous jokes and things like that. And even though it's funny, sometimes I would have got really annoyed. I was the opposite kid. I was the kid that tried really hard, not because I thought I was particularly clever, but because I didn't want to fail. So I was like the one that was really, really trying to pay attention. If anything, it was worse because I wasn't very clever, because I was trying to pay exceptional amounts of attention. And then if the kids started mucking up, it used to really get on my nerves and irritate me, especially as he seemed like quite a bright person as well. So it's kind of like he kind of threw it away, and that bothered me on a personal level. But he wasn't actually doing anything horrible. It just, I was irritated from reading that section of the book. But yeah, that's what there is to say about it. I don't want to go too much because I don't really want to spoil the book. It hasn't really got a plot line for me to describe or discuss. And in itself is not a badly written book. I liked how the chapter headings are done. I think that's interesting. Like, he recommends a film, a song, and an item of food that you should be consuming while reading the chapter. Obviously, most people can't do both, but I thought that was an interesting way to do it, and I did really enjoy snippets of his life, and he's had a very interesting early years, but I think I was expecting too much from this book. That's not to say I didn't enjoy it, but I think I was expecting too much and it didn't meet my expectations. So I think if you're a James Corden fan, it's worth a read, especially if you're only a James Corden fan now because of his sort of presenting work, and not really, you don't really know much anything about him either before Gavin and Stacey or even about Gavin and Stacey. I think it's worth a read. If you do and you just want to find out more about his life, I think it's also good because he has had quite an interesting life and quite a varied life and done things you wouldn't really expect. However, yeah, I'd probably only give it a 7 out of 10. Yeah, it's enjoyable, but it's not as good as it could have been, I think. I think that's the best way to sum this book up. So, yeah, there you go. If anyone else has read this book and has got an opinion on it, please let me know. But otherwise, I hope everyone is well, and I will see you all soon. Goodbye!